Welcome to the talk. This is the episode number 5 of the BMTalk's reading. The title is The Turing Awards Go to Plagiarism. I'd like to first talk about freedom of speech. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. As a professor of Michigan State University, I also have the rights of academic freedom. Colleges and universities teachers are citizens, members of a learned profession, and officers of an educational institution. When they speak or write as citizens, they should be free from institutional censorship or discipline, but their special position in the community imposes special obligations. Some may think about the liability of defamation. Let's look at the legal definition of defamation. A plaintiff must show 4 sins. First, a false statement purporting to be fact. What I said below will be about evidence, and I'm not saying that everything I claim to be plagiarism is fact. And to prove that I have defamation, you need to prove that what I state is false. I just raise questions for us to discuss along with the evidence I presented. The second, publication or communication of that statement to the third person. Third, fault amounting to at least negligence. In other words, that I'm careless in the way that I present the evidence. Fourth, damages or some harm caused to be the person or entity who is the subject of the statement. As I reporting to authorities and also to some university and organizations, my act is protected in the sense that protect activities include complaining of illegal conduct such as harassment, discrimination, wage theft, or safety violations. Participating in a workplace investigation into these issues or testifying as a witness in a lawsuit are protected activities. The definition of plagiarism. The dictionary definition is that the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. Association of Computing Machinery, ACM, states plagiarism is a clear violation of ACM publication policies and a potential violation of ACM Code of Ethics. I will discuss the award from ACM that has a question of plagiarism. For purposes of Stanford University Honor Code, plagiarism is defined as the use without giving reasonable and appropriate credit to or acknowledging the authors or source of another person's original work, whether such work is made up of ideas, research, strategies. It's our citizens' responsibility to report. Stanford University policy, research misconduct, individual responsibility states any individual who believes an act of research misconduct has occurred or is occurring should notify the dean of the appropriate school, who, after preliminary assessment indicating grounds to proceed, should immediately begin an inquiry and so inform the dean of research, who acts on behalf of the provost. Stanford University is that there are individuals who are from universities, and those university officials have the responsibility and to investigate. and Stanford University is just one of the examples. The plagiarism I'm talking about is a major issue, and it's not just some plagiarism that can take place in publication or in universities. It's Turing Award from ACM. It was named after Alan Turing and started from 1966. And it's given annually. ACM awarded. ACM claimed the highest distinction in computer science. And from 2003 and 2013, the annual prize amounts to $250,000 US. And from 2014 up to now, the annual prize amounts to $1 million US. In terms of amount of award money, it's comparable with Nobel Prize. But you will see the quality is not exactly the same. 2018's Turing Award was given to Jeffrey Hinton, Joshua Bengio, and Yann LeCun for conceptual and engineering breakthroughs that have made up deep neural networks a critical component of computing. Let's review first the state of art of computer vision by the end of 1991. In the symbolic schools, the major approach for 3D computer vision is aspect graph. And this particular workshop report is from some very well-known individuals: Fadras, Pentland, Mundy, Jain, Ahuja, Dyer, Iguchi. The title is Why S-Graph Are Not Yet Practical for Computer Vision. Somebody thought that are not practical for computer vision at all. So you can see the aspect graph as a major technique at that time. And some people thought that's not practical, and somebody thought not yet practical. Now let's look at what the aspect graph is. Basically, you need a 3D model. Suppose you have an object like that. Then you have a sphere that look at the object from different angles. Then you tessellate the sphere with viewing angle, each surface corresponding to views that are similar. Then you detect edges from images. You take images from one of the aspect. Then you create edges. Then because you have a model, you reason from geometry whether what you see corresponding to a particular viewing angle. So recognition is based on compilation. You compile a program and that take care of every aspect. Then from a viewing image, you see which viewing angle fits the best. If yes, fit well, then you recognize it. Otherwise, you do not recognize it. So that aspect graph is symbolic in the sense that you really have to have a model. It's not a network, but a computer program. Another school at that time is what we call the neural networks. There are a lot of different networks, and the one particular related to the Turing Award, and I'd like to also discuss, is Neocognitron by Professor Fukushima. And his goal was to recognize individual letters or numbers. And it's starting with the image, then you have age. You compute the ages, then one of the plane corresponding to a particular age orientation, and you have many planes. Each plane has presentation of particular age of particular orientation at every possible positions. And I'll get to an example later on. Then after that, then you start to have another neuron plane, and Fukushima, they manually decide what kind of representation do you have, then you do it again. So this is like a simple cell, this is a complex cell, simple cell, complex cell. You keep doing that, the number of neurons gets fewer and fewer. Fukushima handcrafted. Then finally, then over here you have a list of features, and the feature becomes more and more like a presence of a particular pattern. And over here you have 0 to 9 if we have numerals. So in the cascade, you can see that this is the SC, SC, SC. Here, the solid line means interconnection that's modifiable. Over here, it's a fixed, all right? So basically, the complex cell input is fixed. Interconnection is fixed, handcrafted, according to the task that has in mind. And Fukushima will look at what kind of features he needs, and this is fixed, fixed, fixed. And you will see later on we have a general task, and all the connections are learned. Now let's look at some examples. Suppose you have a tool, right? Now remember, and only have 2D patterns, and you may have two at different locations. You see, they're slightly shifted a little bit, but condition is that you have only one tool in there, all right? No other numbers, maybe slightly different in locations. The weight sharing across pixel basically do convolution. Basically apply, say this is edge detector. You apply, hey, this is a horizontal edge, see that? All right. And this one may be a vertical edge of this orientation came up. You see that at this location. So this is one particular feature, another one, and the location corresponding to pixel location. This is the example of the how many features. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 3, 24. All right, I have 24 features. And you can see that this is slightly shifted. Because why? Because the tool was shifted to the right. See that? And it will not be exactly the same, so that these are not exactly the same, but very much similar in terms of the location, because it detects a particular location, a particular edge. All right, like here. Do you see that? And the last one is another feature. Then this is simple cell, and this is the complex cell. Complex cell look at the grouping, all right, grouping of the edges. And then particular grouping, Fukushima will say that, hey, this is a good idea for that particular edge groupings. At the end, you have those, this is number 2, number 2, number 2, number 2. So basically 0, 1, 2, so it's number 2 here, number 2, number 2, number here. May not be just one cells, and maybe you have multiple cells corresponding to the same class. And do not abstract the features always sensory, because it did not have abstraction learning. And it's monolithic. You have only one single tool in there, and it cannot have two numbers. It will not analyze each number of the tool, for example. And alternate method was not used by Fukushima, was called error backpropagation, and that has led to questionable falsifications, and that I will present it in the next episode. George and Schmidt-Huber, when he wrote a review article about neural networks in the journal Neural Networks, he looked into Fukushima's work. He commented it does not learn. In fact, it does learn. It's more like memory-based root learning, all right? So, give example that you have a convolution using innate weight sharing, so that this is a rigid structure, all right? Rigid structure of each neuron will share weights across different locations. So that all the neurons here will share the same features, detectors at every possible locations inside that plane. All right, that's called convolution. They have another pattern that do convolution here. Basically, each convolution means they apply the same pattern to different locations. And you have high, you have black. If you have bad match, you have white. And do not learn scales, because the size cannot be too small, cannot be too big. It must be roughly the size of that square. So do not learn scales. And do not deal with collected scenes in the sense that you cannot have two numbers, or you can have many objects in the input. And handpicked initial weights, then weighted sum, mean that the feature weights, feature type of this type are handcrafted by Professor Fukushima. And this is U0 response. You C1 comes cell and comes the set. This C2, C3, larger in terms of receptive field. Eventually, the last one will be the class. So let's review again. Get back here. You see that. So you have keep growing because you connect more and more, and many to one, gradually the last one will be class label. And any neuron inside will not really learn from the class. Will not in class, but only for this type is handcrafted features selected by Fukushima and detect what kind of you need and how many features you need, and here how many features you need, here how many features you need, and so on. But those are fixed. Now let's look at the what I did with Professor Huja and Tom Swan. Unfortunately, Tom Swan passed away a few months ago during the virus period, and we had a Zoom memorial. Cresceptron started from 1991 and published in 1992, 93, and later on published in journal 1997. The main idea is the first deep learning network for 3D cluttered world without a 3D model. Because aspect graph has a model. Neocognition by Fukushima assume they have a single object in the input. In our case, this is without 3D model. First of all, it's a 3D. All right, 3D object because human face is 3D. If you have a human face, you have a many cluttered background. You will see that cluttered background is much larger over here. Later on, you see that you have many other things going on. All right. If you get that, and you, as a supervisor, will click the area for the system to pay attention to, then you start to learn just the inside of the polygon, and so the black area is blacked out. So anything other than the polygon will be used for analysis, and outside background, no matter how many objects you have, is totally blacked out. So here, suppose you have a face, then these ideas are similar to Fukushima that I cited, but those features are automatically determined, right? And those features are also this larger receptive field and all automatically determined, and keep doing that. Eventually, the presence of response corresponding to the presence of the object that you learn, all right? And you see a lot of problems there. Give example that there are different scales because they could be big and small, could have different viewing angle, different lighting conditions. Those issues are very challenging. And it's like you need to solve many problems together using a single architecture. And at that time, it was motivated by psychology and neuroscience, Tom Swan. And he told me his job is ambitious. It's like I would try to solve all the vision problem in a single system, because before we were doing structure from motion. Basically, it's motion of a rigid object surround sequences. So then after I got PhD, I started work with Hujan and Huang, and I really appreciate they're really open-minded. I'm doing something so different from what they have been doing, and they're encouraging me. Now, so suppose you have a 3D object, right? And 3D aspect graph said that, you need a model. You need a model object. Over here, we don't have model. Then what? So basically, we have a camera. You take 2D features, and you may learn from different angles. All right, those are the angles. But you really don't need to know what angles is. And you maybe share some features, that this feature, they can be shared. The object of similar feature can be shared from image plane. And some are shared, some are not shared. Eventually, if you learn different viewing angles without 3D model, without 3D model at all, because network is supposed to learn, you can also output the viewing angle. Viewing angle, like if this one with a particular orientation with confidence and with other confidence, then you're just doing a weighted sum. That's another idea. Is like you suppose you have response from network, then you can estimate the orientation. So in other words, that although you do not have 3D model, you can infer the 3D properties from network response. But network itself does not have 3D model at all. So that's what I think the brain was doing at that time. Let's look at what happens in the system. Suppose that you have object, right? This object could be very big, could be small. You could be many other things, right? So I use the idea called scan with different scales and stride. Scan means that I have attention window, and that window starts with smallest one is like 32, and with stride of like 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, boom, boom, boom. Every position you take shot, and you do analysis using this processor. And you do that again. After you are done, then you make larger, like 20% larger. All right. Then you do scan again, with a slightly larger stride, because you want to reduce total number of scan position you need to deal with. Then you make a large again, keep doing until the largest one like this big. Boom, 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 like that. All right. So deal all possible scales and strives to reduce amount of computation, because once the object is big, you have only 32 by 32. This is 32 pixels, and a 1D view of that one. Then you start to have small features. After subsampling, I do automated subsampling. Fukushima did not do automated subsampling because he knows the particular object he has. In our case, I have no idea what the objects are. All right, this is the detection. Then you have subsampling. Then you have position blurring, detection, position blurring, large O. All keep doing that until you have here you find the highest value that neuron responded, then particular value corresponding to a particular type of that particular location. Location corresponding particular. This is one plane that like reporter, another computer, and have another one like dock. Then when you do training, you can load what the network is. Then you can store the network. Network is this network, all right? And network basic to scanning. Then you can also look at visualization of network, going up and down, left, right. This is the fovea image, I call it, attention image. And this is a particular response pattern of a particular node. This is a particular plane, node plane. And you mini plane. I will get to more detail later on. So this is the graphic user interface, allow teacher to teach this system, and teacher teaches this area to be learned or other things. Then teacher can look at the internal response, and you can save some response image that I will present later. This is the architecture, totally 15 layers. That's the input image of the retinal images, 32 by 32. Then you have a feature matching layer. Then you have a reduction layer, feature matching layer, reduction layer. It's called paired structure. So this is, in Fukushima case, he said the simple cell or complex cell. But in his case, he is handcrafting the how many features you need and what feature you need. But in my case, it's totally automatic, because don't have any luxury to look at what's inside, and has to be, everything is automatic. And this is a major difference between Fukushima's work and my work. So it's a learning cascade. And the number of layers is fixed based on the receptive field of this one corresponding to 32 by 32. And then we have a 15, you already covered entire receptive field, because you increase the receptive field gradually. And each neuron here, for example, this neuron will share these features. And you have many features, like 100 features, and each grouping of this one corresponding other groupings, so that the pattern becomes more and more complex, and it's automatic. Everything's automatic. And this means distortion. Suppose you have a large pattern, and people can talk, put careful expressions, and you need to really model that how position can be shifted. If you do rigid pattern matching, it will not do very well, because as soon as they change your spatial expression, it will not match well at all. So I have here, like you have a Markov model. Basically, it's based on neighboring distortion, and it's accomplished by the position blurring. And basically, suppose this is the position, this is the position. If you overlay A and C, for example, this is the A and the C, you overlay, you see the deformation there? And this is no perturbation, with another perturbation, and you overlay this two, you get that one, you have another perturbation. So you can do many deformations, because number of image you learned is very limited. But you need to also generalize into views that you have never observed. So that's the major idea of distortion tolerance. Look at some examples. So we totally have 20 classes. We'll give a sample of those classes. We have ET host, sports reporter. Those are video get from TV, and some are from lab. Peter is one of the students in Ahuja's lab. I also went to UIUC campus and took a setting of the walkways, cars, walking the fire hydrant, traffic sign, cameras, computers, all those things. Now look at how much variation you have. I look at the video, there's so much variation. Over here, the network learn with confidence. You have very hard, just 3 images that learned. If we learned, you have 1 means highest possible response from the highest neuron at the last. But you can have, sometimes you can have 1, the new views. Those are 3 learned views, and those are all the new views. New views have never learned, and you can see that some are low response, but still highest. 60, this is a 0.6, and some are high, 0.57 is low, but still highest. So in other words, the network learn reliably, but if you deform, it's a slightly different from what they learned in this 3, and still have a response correctly as the top winner, and even you have orientation change, see that? And you can blink eyes, all those things. Another example is that I want to see the response of sports reporter. Then this is the direction 0, H, direction 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, totally 8. Level A, input B, and you have level 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the grouping from here to here. Then you start have a larger receptive field. You can see it a little more blurry because it will group presence of the H corresponding to multiple receptive fields. That means blurred, subsampled, and the number of neurons is reduced automatically, not handcrafted. Then keep doing that. You see that gradually become more blurred because that corresponds to a particular larger template with position tolerance. Once you get to that one, this is the first class, second class, and so on. You can see that in this case, the sports reporter was recognized correctly because the highest one. And these New York Stock Exchange reporters slightly responded, but not as high. Do you see that? Peter, not as high. See that? And Peter has 3 angles. So you can see the very detailed response. You can see what's going on. And you will see later on in Professor Li Feifei's work. He did not have this kind of hierarchical representation. That's really something I raise question about. Look at the detection, because you have multiple objects. See that? And recognize the object and do segmentation. Basically, you segment it. So this one is segmented. And you do post-analysis. After you recognize, say, this is a sports reporter, and you go back to analyze which features contribute from which neuron, going back, and you draw a polygon by the system automatically. Then this is the polygon in which the features contributed to the recognition of sports reporter. Then the same thing for the C-SPAN and New York Stock Exchange, and you have a TV host, and interviewing a smiling child, and you have female performers here, and movie actors, and you have a passing in UIUC, you have cars, and you have fire hydrant, and you have in our lab, you have a telephone set, you learn telephone set, you also learn chairs, and you learn computers, And for Peter, I took different angles and learned many views that are different from the angle we took from. And for size differences, you can see that you can have a smaller face, a larger face. And it doesn't matter very much because the scan with different scales. All right, suppose they have the same image, you have really big field, the entire view of the image still fine because it scans with different scales. And what about shapes? So if shape changes, like dogs, right? You see that dogs? Those are the dogs. And because you have features and has a tolerance in the position in terms of grouping, and you learned from here, learn here, but you recognize from this view. So they are similar like this one, but not exactly the same. But for enough evidence, right? This one similar to that, not exactly the same. This one similar to that, not exactly the same. But there is a tolerance built in so they can generalize. The confidence is like 64% and 78% if you look at the real images learned, and it will be like the 100%. All right, so you can see that very general purpose solved several major problems of computer vision at that time, and nobody even looked into because it's so challenging, and approaches very different from aspect graph and from also Fukushima's work. I'm not saying that we solve every vision problem. I will not talk about this at the episode, but if you look at the other episode, we solved all the vision problems, virtually all. That's what we mean by emergent Turing machine, a universal Turing machine that solved all vision problems. In fact, all AI problems. That's my current hypothesis. All the AI problem has been solved by a single network, brain-like network. That's only hypothesis. I'm not saying that has been fully proved because we even don't know what do we mean by general purpose, right? But we do have general purpose formulation I will talk about later in the other talks. Look at the performance, all right? We have a phase 10 classes and use 14 for training and 54 for disjoint test. So this 52 are all different from training. We have non-faces object 10, and put together we have 20 classes and 68 images. The top one correct 100%. Basically, that I'm lucky that the top one was always correct. But if you only report unique, all right, basically top 2, top 3 also report the same thing. That's not many, all right. For this one, 100%, but the others, the class of faces. So, for example, all the faces they reported was maybe from different people, but they are faces. And over here, the unknown faces, the class was correct in the other reported at 87% unique for top 1. And top 2 probably not the same class. Put together at 97%. So in other words, if you take the winner and reported class is always correct. But there are some runner-ups. Their reported class may not be the class of the top 1. All right. In this case, 3%. All right. What's the pro? And the pro was that it's nearest neighbor across all levels. So it's very efficient and correct, because if you have sample comes in, guarantee that it's nearest neighbor. You find the nearest neighbor, then it's correct. And scale invariant could be any different scale, small or big, smallest from 32, and to all the scales that fit into the input image. Position invariant because the convolution, and they apply the same feature detector at different pixel location at a stride pace. So that will be position invariant. No iteration means that inside the Cresceptron network, there's no iteration at all. Basically, that computation can be carried out from neuron to neuron in a single pass. There's no iteration going back and forth because the computation is from early neuron to the later neuron and there are competition inside each area, but there's no iteration among the neurons, so there's no iteration at all, so that you can control the speed of computation as long as the speed of the processors are fast enough. Then once the same network will have exactly the same time to complete each computation. In Fei Li's work and some other work from like Turing awardees and some papers from Google's, they are doing iterations, and I'll get to that in the next episode. The major cons is the network has a lot of nodes because each feature will consider as new and will generate new neuron plan for that feature. And that feature is not just original age direction edges, but also edge compositions. Basically, the feature compositions, as long as it's treated as new, will create a new neuron plan for that features. Each neuron plan corresponding to a node. The number of nodes becomes very big. The more features you used, the more samples you learn, the more neurons will be generated. And that's a major limitation of this method. And after I publish this work, we have a much better method that I will talk about in the future talk and also mention a little bit in the next episode. Basically, all the work after Cresceptron had little novelties in contribution in terms of concepts, contrary to what ACM was talking about concept of deep learning. There's little novelties at all. What they're doing is to reduce the mechanism that make high performance for Cresceptron. Basically, what they want was to increase the classes. Fei Li increased that 20 class to 101. Then after she got a job, then she started to inflate that number, increase a lot of classes, a lot of images, then using much weaker mechanism. Give example, she did not do scale at all. And she didn't mention that scale at all in her paper when she was learning. So scale was assisted by a human. Human look at it, then this is scale, and there's no scale change at all as far as what she wrote. And also she did another thing, which is the mismanagement of the context. The release of the test set was very early. As far as I know, that the amount of time is more like 17 days, over 2 months, allow people to generate labels for the test. So once you have a way to generate labels for tests, all you need is just a human, hire a human to label it. Because just like you label for the training set, you can hire somebody to label the test set. So easy. Another third one that I was doing is the compute for resource. Compute resource, basically they tried many networks. And the networks was using error backboxing on the validation set on the surface. But actually the best network that was picked up was not just based on the best performance on the validation set, but in fact also based on the test set. I'll get to that. So the post-selection is a major cheating in all the deep learning method that I know of. Because the Turing Award was awarded to deep learning, so let's look at a history overview, and then I will look at some concrete examples. Paul Weber's 1974, he already proposed for error backpropagation. That's a gradient-based method. A question about it's a fraud. All right, I'll get the example later on in the next episode. But he was seemed the first person that do error backpropagation for neural networks. Then Fukushima, neocognitron, and monolithic mean for the entire pattern, whether this pattern belongs to a class, does not allow anything that inside is 3D or multiple objects. And that's 1987. The Cresceptron was meant to solve general vision problem, although it didn't solve all the vision problem. But for 3D world, it has 7 new classes of mechanisms I will talk about later. After that, we have ImageNet, organized by Professor Li Fei and others. And I think they have an issue of data falsifications and misleading claim about that the computers exceed human performance, and a question about those claims. And then Google came in 2004 and funded $400 million to acquire DeepMind. And because this investment, suddenly deep learning become hard, but there is an issue of plagiarism and fraud. And I will talk about the question about the plagiarism over this talk and about the fraud in the next episode. So what's new for Cresceptron? Cresceptron was recognized by some scholars to be the first max pooling one. That's number 6. But many people did not see. Once they look at the method from hindsight, they start to use it, but without understanding that this idea is very, very new. All right. So this is like using or plagiarizing the ideas without really even think about it. That's a new idea. Number 1 new idea is deep learning network for 3D or any D features, any dimensional features. Basically, it's a features, 3D object from 2D images using any D features without a 3D model. So key idea is that we learn 3D world without even a model. All right, so we don't really need to have a monolithic model of an object like face or head. That's many people start to do this without even citing Cresceptron later. I will talk about that later. And the second is the first concurrent detection and recognition for colorless scenes. Because for colorless scenes, you really need to do detection. You cannot do something like Fei Li will talk about later on, that whether you have this feature present. All right, suppose I have a bag of words and you have features that have a from object, but you scrambled it everywhere and still it's there. No, that's not what we're talking about. We say have detection and recognition happening at the same time. And with also sensor plane scan with different scales and with stride means that slightly similar locations, we don't need to spend network learning time. All right, so better generalization also. Number 3 novelty is the first method for matching large-scale 3D objects using a deep hierarchy. Because the large-scale 3D objects are really, really difficult to match. You really need to have tolerance along the hierarchy, and you do matching and tolerance automatic architecture. And then a particular idea of that is called paired architecture, where feature matching followed by subsampling. Feature matching is in Fukushima, but subsampling is not in Fukushima. Fukushima, because he knows the particular object he was learning, and he handcrafted, I think, the number of neurons for the complex cell layers, but we have to do automatic because we don't know what object you are looking at. So subsampling is one of the major advance of the perception. That's number 4 ideas. Number 5 is that because just doing max polling is not even enough. All right, you must do the position blurring. And I use the Markov model about a position process. So you start to do blurring, then you have a Markov model, multi-level Markov model, you can deform a lot, much farther away from a pixel-wise deformation. And you can have many pixel away deformation using this position blurring idea. It's blurring based on probability, actually. Then you have max pooling that was recognized by Joshua Schmidt-Huber and others. And it's the max pooling was coined by Tommaso Poggio later on, but originally I used maximization and I didn't say the max pooling, but the ideas are the same, all right, very similar. And number 7, it does segmentation using post-analysis. And we're also doing segmentation. ImageNet later on also allow you to identify where the object is using a rectangle shape. In our case, we used a polygon shape. So we did much more powerful technique than the later work. So remember, you have ideas 1 to 7. All right, those are the original ideas that are unique for Cresceptron. And that's how the later work can deal with 3D objects. Tommy Pardew, a good friend of mine, he was interested in Cresceptron. And before that, Tommy was doing basic regularization-based neural networks, recognizing input pattern, but not for images, because the image has a tremendous amount of issues like position, scale, orientation, all those things put together. And he was interested. He said that, John, and I have an image understanding. He didn't say it's image understanding. He said that a learning and vision, and if you can give us slides or two so that I can use it, but I do not promise I will use it. That's a proof. And Tom didn't say that I should not show that email, but I need to show you as evidence when I have protected activity. Basically, he knows my work. He did not know the detail. He invited me to give a talk, and I sent the request to him. And I don't know whether he used that for the talk at all. Then he invited me October 19th of the same year to give a talk at MIT group. Paid my trip, putting on trip ticket and the hotel. I really appreciate it. After that, his behavior was really, really surprising to me. And I'll get to that later. There are many researchers that are interested in computer vision, also including other modalities. I call it celebrities. But somehow their behavior seems to amount to... I cited Fukushima's work because I got the idea of the cascade idea from him, but I deal with general problems. Then we have Cresceptron with Ahuja and Huang. The red is the person that used idea of Cresceptron without citing at all. And one is Yang Lagom and Joshua Benjo. They later on received Turing Award. Tommy Pardew as early as 2007. So that's like 10 years later. 10 years later, and they start to use the idea and maximization HMax. And that's like 2 years after they saw this, after this, in 1994, I gave talk. So like 5 years later, Tommy Pardew start to publish it 5 years later. And Lacombe, after saw this one, they start to do this. This is like 6 years after they start to publish without citing Cresceptron. Li Feifei did a PhD 2005. That's like how many years after this? 8 years. And then she published her work, largely her thesis work at PMI 1 year later. Yan Lacombe, he published NIPS 2005. That started to do 3D actually. Over here still 2D. But with the 2D, they already used the idea of Cresceptron without citing. Here started to do 3D. And Yunin also 2009 started to do 3D, and he did that before, but the idea of Cresceptron was used in his work. Jeffrey Hinton was doing 2D until NIPS 2012 when they participated in image net context. They started to 3D. So mainly I was doing this one, mainly it become the 3D work, although this is 2D work too, but they already used the architecture of the Cresceptron. Feifei Li worked with Google's staffers and they did CVPR application 2014, and they also used the idea of Cresceptron without citing. So let's look at a few examples. Lacombe in the Neural Information Processing System 1989, that's the backpropagation using hand digit recognition isolated. At that time, they just have a different size. It is that there's no maximization process going on. That's 89. Another 89 work in the journal Neural Computation. You can see there's no maximization or generalization of position going on here. All right, that's 1989 again. But when they did their publication in 1998, look at that. 1989, that's 9 years after, they start publish a paper about 2D work, document recognition, in the proceeding of IEEE. And look what they did. Hey, you're subsampling, see that? And still have a hierarchy subsampling. So Joshua, Benjo, and Yelacom, they use the idea of subsampling there. See that? Subsampling. That's not in Fukushima's work, but they use the idea of the Cresceptron, idea 326, but they did not cite the Cresceptron. So this is as early as 98, although it's 2D, but already was doing something that I raised the issue of plagiarism. Purdue, in 1999, and wrote a paper in Nature Neuroscience. At that time, they did not have algorithm ready, and they were discussing only in the Louis Huber with Purdue, and they already was using something that already used the idea of max-like. You see that max-like? And they already used that one. So you can see that surprisingly little quantitative modeling has been done. Come on, Cresceptron has very detailed quantitative modeling. And why he said that little? I don't know what he little. Maybe Cresceptron was the only one, but you need to cite it. He didn't cite it. And max-like is the one of the ideas that in the tolerance of position, and he used ideas, Cresceptron ideas 1 to 7, but they didn't cite it. Purdue, Nature Neuroscience had architecture tree like that. Do you see that? So have like simple cell, complex cell, composite features, and complex features. It was maximization, and that didn't use the ideas 1 to 7 from Cresceptron, but did not cite Cresceptron as they should. And this is a max there, this is a max there, max there. And they said the only thing that probably they claim new, I will talk about the patent, is that you can just skip a layer. But this skip of layer is little novelty. So this is the idea from Cresceptron. Then Fei Li, then 2006, she published the work with another student, and Pietro Perona at Caltech, and they called it one-shot learning. They used something called maximum likelihood. They used the idea of one, basically recognize 3D objects based on 2D patterns. That's what we're using. Cresceptron idea 3 about scales was not used. So in other words, they degenerated. And I will raise that issue in the next episode about possible fraud. They did not cite Cresceptron, although they used the idea of without 3D model and just using 2D patterns, features. But they did not really do hierarchical grouping. And Fei at that time did not have that at all. Purdue, by 2007, they already had an experimental system by Sir, and the architecture is like that. They have maximization, see that? This is the idea of Cresceptron, like that. And they used ideas 1 to 7 from Cresceptron, but they did not cite Cresceptron. At that time, Purdue filed a patent. By the way, we did not file patent because the Ahuja and Tang Huang did not ask me to file patent. But Purdue turned around and filed a patent, and they have a diagram in that patent, and something they say I can skip a level. So that skip level as a novelty. They use the idea of 1 to 7, but they use the bypass as a novelty. Otherwise, you cannot claim anything as a patent because the Cresceptron already published. The patent examiner will look at it. Hey, this is already published. So something that I find is new is called bypass. All right, very minor. But they claim did not include mass polling, although they published as max as a feature, even a novelty. I go back there. Even the paper that Tom was claimed to be a novelty. See that? But they did not put that in the patent application because the patent examiner is more careful than paper reviewer probably, but they still did not cite they should. And this particular patent application, they didn't cite it. Very surprising. Then Purdue got invited at National Science Foundation as a distinguished speaker and used the idea of Cresceptron. Then they received NSF Center funding. And those are the chronicle discussion of the activities. And as soon as they got idea, and they never cite our work and never contact me anymore. And at a certain point, I was asking, send email to Purdue, why don't you cite our Cresceptron while using our idea? He did not even respond. Hinton, in neural information processing systems, that's 2012, after they competed in ImageNet test, Cresceptron, his student, and like to work on it. Jeff Hinton allows them to work on it. I will talk about the other issue of the amounts to fraud in the next episode. And then this one, I only talk about the plagiarism. This is architecture they are using in the NIPS paper. This is clearly the max folding ideas and the tolerance of position, and that's the idea of Cresceptron. So they use idea of Cresceptron, idea 1 to 7, but did not cite Cresceptron. And Fei Li worked with Google and published CVPR. It had other works too, but I just give you example. 2014, this is Fei Li and other staffers at Google. They used architecture like that. See that? They have the normalization. Normalization, this is the some idea of the Cresceptron. And max folding, that's the Cresceptron idea. They used idea 1 to 7 from Cresceptron, but they did not cite as they should. Then Fei Li, at a certain point, I was really surprised. How come they all use the idea of Cresceptron, but without citing? It's amount to plagiarism. And I start to send Fei and with the CC to Christopher Koch and Peter Palona. They are her PhD thesis advisors. And I read her thesis and PhD thesis, and there's clear need to cite Cresceptron. She was citing some papers that are not useful for her, but she did not cite Cresceptron that tremendously helped her. And I asked her that this is a discussion, and I hope that you can have a discussion issue, all right, this issue, and she did not respond. And neither did Christopher Koch and Peter Palona. They did not respond. Then deep learning was really hard. Lacombe, Benjo, and Hinton had a review article about deep learning in Nature. It's about 3D. See that this is 3D object, and they cite quite a few publications. You see max folding there. So use the idea of 1 to 7, all the 1 to 7, but did not cite Cresceptron. Recently, I was discussing this issue because I have a responsibility to report. There was an email I received on April 22nd that's in Chinese, and I don't need to really translate. Those who are interested probably just translate, or somebody, your Chinese friend, to translate it. And I ask her or him to show your ID, right? Tell me who you are, because my discussion is real name. And you don't have real name, you need to really tell me your name. And that person did not respond. But look at that. 我是你的爸爸. In Chinese, 我是你的爸爸 means I am your father. Or maybe mother. Why did that person want to claim to be male? Is that on purpose? That person was using Chinese that calls 碰瓷 means touch parceling or extortion. Real meaning is extortion. And that person was using something like 撒泼打滚的无赖. This means a log rolling on the ground while screaming. And that person was using abusive personal attack without really discussing the issue. Nothing was discussed, a technical issue at all, in terms of discussion whether the evidence is really the evidence or false. Did not really observe law by rules of order, because law of order said that you cannot attack the presenter's motive. You cannot attack his background. You can only discuss the point that he was using, because his motive irrelevant. That person said that the Department of Philosophy of Tsinghua University, and she said that I have look at that. It said that 我是清华大学哲学专业的学生. So basically it says I'm in the Tsinghua University of Philosophy area. But Department of Philosophy has 8 areas of study, but there's no philosophy area. So it seems to me that she was claiming an area in the department that does not exist. And she did not reply, or he did not reply to my request for showing your ID, so that once you have the real name, and I'm happy to discuss with you. And now the questions remaining, many important questions, and we must be sensitive to those questions. Should such celebrities' behavior be allowed and spread in our research community? And because they are supposed celebrities, people respect them, should their behaviors be discussed at all? Or just keep everything in a black box, lack of transparency? The granting organization SM, when they study these issues, are they in the conflict interest situation? If they said that those work is plagiarized, did they give ACM a bad name or good name? Oh, should ACM admit that it made an error in granting plagiarism as a Nobel Prize caliber award, Turing Award? Are the employers of these celebrities in the conflict interest situation? So the universities like Stanford University, New York University, University of Toronto, and University of Montreal, they are the employers, and including Google. Are they under the conflict interest situation? And do they think that it should hire external independent investigator to investigate, or just hire somebody in the university to investigate? It's like you want to fight corruption. Say, left hand is corrupted and right hand invested left hand. You control by the same brain. How can the research community hold such related authority accountable? There are authorities, employers, and ACM. Are they accountable to what they claim to be ethical? Why did so much university taxpayers' money go to research misconduct? Those people like Tommy Podger, like Faith Lee, received a lot of fundings. By the way, as soon as I published in Science in 2001 with 6 collaborators, all my new fundings did not come. But those that used my ideas, used Cresceptron ideas, and did not cite, got funded a lot. What's going on? Is what exposed here a tip of iceberg in science and engineering? Do you think the kind of research misconduct, and I will talk about the more severe problem in the next episode, which is fraud, is that isolated case, or it's really going on in other disciplines? I open those questions for you to discuss. I welcome you to put your comments under the YouTube video, and we'll also post this one onto 3D Tube, a site mainly for 3D videos. Thank you very much for your attention.